Okay, so welcome everyone. Today we are going to talk about a wonderful new or recently developed RFP within the National Science Foundation. And we have a guest presentation, Dr. Narkrisha Norman, who is Division of Graduate Education and Human Resources Program Director in the Directorate for Education and Human Resources with the National Science Foundation. This is the 7th session that we've done to introduce faculty and students at Drexel to different program officers from different foundations. So we've had private foundations, we've had federal agencies, and different combinations. And the purpose of this series is to allow faculty and students to learn about the great work of different programs within foundations through hearing about their core mission with these programs, as well as trends and funding goals, and the opportunity to discuss any possible questions about the RFPs. So the way that we're going to run this today is we're going to let Dr. Norman do an overview of the racial equity and STEM education program description. And then we'll have probably around 15 minutes towards the end for anyone to ask a question. And what I'd like to suggest is that if people have a question, to post it in the chat, and then I'll pull the questions up through the chat, just because I don't know how many people will actually attend today. So if we're a little overwhelmed with questions, I can sort of sort through them, excuse me. Dr. Norman, would you care to introduce a little bit about yourself, perhaps your background and how long you've been at NSF, and then launch into the program description?
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to have you join us today. As Jen mentioned, this is a new funding opportunity at NSF. So as much as I can talk about it and as much as you can spread the word, is exciting for me. So I am a program director in the Division of Graduate Education, where I work with the Graduate Research Program and with the Racial Equity and STEM Education program description. I mentioned that because we hope that you also consider helping your students throughout the Graduate Research Fellowship program process. But about me, so this is my 3rd year at NSF. I'm actually what you call an IPA NSF. And so my home institution is Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, where I'm associate professor in the Department of Engineering and Technology. So my background is in STEM education research, but my doctorate is also in aerospace engineering. So I try to creatively combine the two. And I'm happy to talk to you today about the EHR Racial Equity and STEM Education Program description. So the program description is actually funded directorate-wide. So though I'm in a division of graduate education, we have program directors from each of our divisions. So that's undergraduate education, Division of Research and Learning in informal and formal settings, and Division of Human Resource Development. We all work together on the Racial Equity and STEM Education Program description. So it's funded throughout. So I use this slide because if you can find yourself in anywhere in education, from graduate to informal or undergraduate or so on and so forth, then you can find yourself in the program description. So today I'll talk a little bit about a program description because most people are used to solicitations. And so I'll try to mention a little bit what a program description is. And I'll talk about the finer points of this particular funding opportunity. And going just a little bit into proposal preparation, just a little bit of that information. We found that we have a lot of new PIs to the program description, which we are very excited about. And so we provide the additional information in case they need it. So bear with me if it's a repeat. So what is a program description? It's a call for proposals that encourage the submission of programs in a general area of interest to NSF. And in this case, it's racial equity and STEM education. And more specifically, the science around racial equity and STEM education. The synopsis that you will see online is the whole thing. That's it. So there's no additional RFP or any additional information that comes out. The only other place you will find information that will help you when you're applying is the PAPPG, the NSF Proposal and Award Procedures and Policies Guide, which even if you're familiar with that, there's been an update in October. So there are some new things. We're on version 22-1 with the PAPPG. So I'll talk a little bit about what we mean when we're asking about the projects, and just go into a little bit more of the details as far as knowledge generation, and what's important to us is the voices and leadership and proposal preparation. So as I mentioned before, this is not a finite list. We actually welcome this open to any number of different organizations and institution types. We just have this list here to let you know that it is a wide variety opportunity. And one of the reasons why we have the opportunity so wide, and the program description is written in a general way, is to give the PIs a chance to be creative in the way they choose to partake in this endeavor. So some very important things. Competitive proposals have to clearly inform how the work addresses racial equity, advances racial equity, and addresses systemic racism. And again, we're talking about the science behind racial equity and systemic racism are important. We want to know how do systemic barriers impact access to, retention in, and success in STEM education, its research, and its workforce. And another thing you might notice when you read the program description is that these constructs, they have different meanings in different settings. So we haven't defined them. We're allowing the PIs to have that definition on their own. There are actually 5 goals. We want to advance the science and promotion of racial equity in STEM, to contribute to removing the systemic barriers that impact STEM, its education, its workforce, and scientific advancement. One is institutionalize effective and inclusive environments for STEM learning, research, and professionals. Want to diversify the leadership, and we specifically mean the PIs and co-PIs, the institutions and ideas that NSF funds. We want to expand the epistemologies, perspectives, and experience in STEM. We understand that no one proposal will do all of these things, but collectively, the portfolio of the program description, we're hoping will meet these 5 goals. In addition to that, it's important to know that we are looking to generate knowledge through research and practice. And this is our full list. Again, no one proposal will meet all these, but some will build theory, others will develop methods, test approaches and interventions, assess the potential, efficacy, effectiveness, and scalability of approaches and interventions. Some will establish, cultivate, and assess authentic partnerships, which is important for this particular funding opportunity. Some will change institutional, organizational, and structural practices and policies, and some will focus on effective behavioral, cultural, social components and implications. Important for us is that proposals are led by individuals and communities most impacted by the inequities caused by systemic racism. In the event that they're not led by these institutions, these individuals or communities, it's important that they're led in authentic partnership. And by that, we mean that the voices, knowledges, and experiences of those individuals and communities are within the center of those proposals. So we'll see them in leadership positions, research positions, conceptualization and research of the proposal, and decision-making processes, and also in interpretation and dissemination of evidence and results. This particular part is not an either or. This is an important component. Now I'll talk a little bit about some other details about some nuts and bolts around the questions that we usually get. As I mentioned before, the program description has funding across the directorate. So anywhere in education, we're hoping to fund. And this is a program description. So neither funding levels, which we always get asked, there's no minimum or maximum budget guideline set. We're hoping that that helps with creativity, though I know that sometimes it could be also a little bit challenging to figure out those guidelines when you're not giving them, but hopefully it adds to creativity. Sometimes we're asked, like how do we determine where to submit the concept? So sometimes individuals might be interested or their particular project might fit within the racial equity, and sometimes it fits another EHR program solicitation. One thing that is important to note is that you cannot submit the same proposal and for both another program solicitation and for the racial equity program description. They have to be substantially different because we do actually monitor that. And I think that lends itself to some confusion. So when making that decision, you just have to find the best fit. Sometimes that has something to do with time frame. And another way to figure out what's the best fit may be just to reach out to the program directors and ask. So for us, we offer the service of a one-page, optional one-page short description of your project, and we'll talk to you a little bit about it and answer your questions about your specific project. And most programs are open to that also. So when you're making those decisions, that could be helpful. So the subject areas may include all STEM and all other domains currently supported by NSF as they relate to STEM education. We don't usually support health and medicine. That's typically the domain of NIH, but unless they are specifically related to STEM education or other areas supported by NSF. And of course, you all may know that you can go on NSF site to find out specifically which areas are supported by NSF. So we had a July release date, target date. And some people ask, okay, you have a target date, does that mean I can submit a week after? It's very important to submit really close to that target date. If you go too far in a direction after the target date, then you may not be reviewed during that target date. So we had a July target date, an October target date, which just passed. We'll have another target date the second Tuesday in October every year thereafter. And our next target date is for March 22nd. And future target dates will be the first Tuesday in March thereafter. For the racial equity and STEM education program description, you can submit in research.gov or grants.gov. So as far as the one-page concept paper, again, it's optional. You're so free to submit the full proposal without the concept paper. Again, we have a lot of new PIs, or some people just have general questions, and the concept paper gives us a chance to have a relational discussion. That being said, that we do our very best, and so far we've met the limit here, that if you submit at least 6 weeks prior to the target date, that we'll do our best to have a turnaround and talk to you about your concept paper. This is just some nuts and bolts about the concept paper. So just think about it in terms of the NSF review criteria of intellectual merit and broader impacts, and how that relates to the program description. So how does your proposal address racial equity and or systemic racism, and in what aspects of STEM education or workforce development does it address? Is it led by those most impacted by systemic racism, or how does it include authentic partnership and leadership and the voices of those most impacted? And what will we learn? So, in itself, it has to have a scientific component. So when we're thinking about racial equity and systemic racism, we're thinking about the science behind those things also. And who will it benefit? The one-page concept papers are just like as I say, a point of reference for a conversation, and we give feedback, though we understand that you know the project better than us, so you have to go with your gut instinct and what you know is best. But at least it gives you a chance to address some of those questions that you might have. A little bit about proposal preparation. I mentioned intellectual merit and broader impacts. So what knowledge will this project generate, and what impact will this project have on society at large? What is the potential of proposed activity to advance knowledge and understanding within its own field and across different fields? And what is the potential for the proposed activity to benefit society or advance societal outcomes? To what extent do the proposed activities suggest and explore creative, original, or potentially transformative concepts? And we understand everything is not going to be potentially transformative, specifically in the area of racial equity and systemic racism. Some of those things that experts have been doing for years have not been explored or disseminated in a way. So to you, it may not be potentially transformative, but to the overall benefit of STEM, it really could be. So is the plan for carrying out the proposed activities well-reasoned, well-organized, and based on sound rationale? Does the plan incorporate a mechanism to assess success? How well is the individual team organized or organization to conduct the proposed activities? One question that's not here is, when we talk about authentic partnerships, we really mean authentic partnerships. Not in a way where you collect a group of people's information and incorporate that information into the project, but they are actually partners in the development of the projects, and they're actually partners in the research, and they're actually partners in the dissemination, not just a subset of the leadership. Are there adequate resources available to the PI, so either the home institution or through collaborations to carry out the proposed activities? A little bit about the content of proposal, but each of these things you can find in the PAPPG. So I know even if I read them all, you wouldn't remember them all, but they're in the PAPPG in detail, and this is recorded if you need to see it again. The dissemination plan. So we don't require a dissemination plan, but I assume that the most successful proposals will have a dissemination plan. So in a dissemination plan, how is this plan? How does it demonstrate that it's going to proactively share what was learned with the individuals and the communities who are a part of this authentic partnership? The budget and duration. So again, you should determine the scope of activities in accordance with the PAPPG, which I mentioned before. Again, we're on 22-1, that's the newest version. And we have no specific budget limits, but we assume that the budget will match the project in a way that makes sense. There are no time frame limits, but when you read the PAPPG, you'll see it's typically between 3 and 5 years. And these are some links that can help. So there's training for submitting through research.gov and grants.gov. Again, many of you may know this already, but we get a lot of new PI, so this is important for us. The PAPPG, there's a link in here, and some things about proposal review. So how the merit review process is another thing that we generally include in these outreach events. So we do not have a set of upcoming office hours just yet, but we're working on those. And you'll find the information on the website when it's available. And I will leave it up to questions.